Lee and I get to work with a lot of pro athletes, and people often ask us, who are your heroes? Guys like this are our heroes. The pro athletes, we call those clients. So without further ado, this is Dr. Ed Thomas. Welcome.
Well, that's right. My name is Thomas. I'll give you the quick introduction. I actually face guys just like you. I teach at a university in the Midwest, and so I'm an entertainer too. I try to be to interest my students, undergraduate and graduate students, in where we've been. And if we really, as the slide says, if we really want to know where we can go, the possible directions we can go, we must go back and look at where we've been, right? I mean, that's the key. I won't tell you too much about where I've been. You can tell I'm old, so you know I've been in a lot of places. But I can say, I've lived in Korea, Germany, Burma, Thailand, taught at a bunch of universities, U of Iowa, Northern Illinois, Emory, you heard of Emory University over in Atlanta, taught at a lot of places. Don't want to pretend to know very much, but this stuff here has always interested me, and I'll give you a little bit of that. Let's go to work. It's fast, so hang on. We're going to cover about 150 years, and it's going to go very fast. So what are we looking at? Well, you know it. In your more sober moments, you sit and you wonder, who am I? I mean, one thing we all have in common here is that we're all dead. It's just a matter of time. These things are temporary. They're little illusions, and we give them up at some point. And the question all of us have to ask is, who am I? And why am I here? Now, there's good evidence that we're special, whether you're a creationist or what's the other one called? Evolutionist. Yeah, I mean, no matter which one you're thinking, we're still special. We're this uniquely potential human being. But there's evidence also that we're not always going to evolve. We can devolve if we're not careful. It's a rough road. We begin, as we are, with tremendous potential, and you never know how it's going to end up. But this we do know, and for those of you that are in the science of human movement, this is what we know. This is a long journey we've been on. When we look back for the models, we always end up at the Greeks in Western culture. And the Greeks had a great idea. They created gods that weren't too different from them, just human enough to be able to reach toward. And so they had these ideals of what the potential human could be. And it wasn't just for the boys. This is around 250 AD, 250 years after the death of Christ. We see women in bikinis with dumbbells and med balls. So don't think that what you're doing today is completely new. There was a period during the Dark Ages where things got grim, but then there was the Renaissance. This book is De Arte Gymnastica. You know what that means, right? The art of gymnastics. Mercurialis was the fellow's name. Good person to know if you can get him to wake you up at night. And there was your first wobble board. Pretty cool, huh? Climbing off the ground. Slate rotational drills. Figure 8 patterns with dumbbells. Now this looks like this young boy is being tortured, but he's actually being helped to awaken his hip flexors and his shoulder girdle. So done correctly, this is called what? Is that flexion or extension? That's extension, yeah. Well, just like us, they had to jump through hoops, and clear evidence that in some parts of the world they did a pretty good job. Have you guys done this in your physical education classes at all? It's pretty high-end training, isn't it? Well, take a look. Now this is, by the way, I'm only here, and I rarely speak publicly, and I'm going to tell you this, just because you probably already know this. I'm here because of these guys that teach here, Dr. Burton and Gray Cook. I don't know if you know this. These guys are known all over the country. And guys like us owe them a heck of a lot for what they've done to move us forward. This principle, this pyramid that I stole from one of your slides, if you haven't recognized it yet, has not changed over the years. This is it. Basic movement is the core. Fundamental movement patterns to performance, to enduring skills. All right, hold on. Here we go. Leisure. Greek word skole. Latin became schola. English became school. What's leisure? It's not a home run and a hot dog. It is seeking the most profound wisdom that is available to humans. That's what leisure really means. And here we are tonight, we have what is called leisure. You have no idea, I suppose, some of us, because we get accustomed to how lucky we are. You're in that place right now. All the conditions are met. There's a Greek word, or the Latin cultus, from where we get the word culture. It means the search for and celebration of the divine unknown. Well, look at that. Look at the precarious balance between culture and leisure. One misfire, and it can collapse. That's how delicate this balance is. Now, there are three content areas of this thing you call human movement: restorative, martial or military, and pedagogical. Restorative used to be called medical gymnastics. The other is military gymnastics, and the other is pedagogical gymnastics. What's the left side? This is what fuels us. Did anyone get up in the morning this morning and say, look in the mirror and say, let's see, I hope I'm dumber by the end of the day? You know, maybe I can get my mouth to hang open just a little bit more. You know, relax your jaw. Let's get a little more mouth breathing in today. No, it didn't happen, did it? Because there's something potentially human about all of us. Well, why do we do things? We become what we are, why? First for ourselves, then for others, and then because there's some spiritual drive in all of us that fuels what we do. Well, that's the ideal paradigm. A balance between the restorative, the martial, and the pedagogical, fueled by an ever-increasing Maslowian hierarchical need. And when it's done just right, that balance becomes buoyant. So, the first is restorative. Techniques obvious and subtle to bring the body toward its optimal state of harmony, compensate for the stress of daily life. Is all movement equal? Just physical activity, will that make you fit? Do an experiment. Go to the second floor of the residence hall at night and jump out the window. That's physical activity, right? See how you feel when you land. Who is that guy, by the way? Anybody recognize that face? That's Joseph Pilates. That is inverted, brachiated flexion. The martial component, techniques obviously subtle to teach appropriate offensive and defensive responses to external aggression. That's this stuff. Pedagogical, sports, games, theoretical bodies of knowledge, and dance. So there's self. That's when we fulfill our basic needs. That's your perfect self picture. But if you're only interested in self, you can get pretty sluggish. There's others where you sacrifice your needs for other people. Doesn't always mean in uniform either. By doing anything you do well, you serve your country, don't you? Well, we created this whole thing. I mean, here you are, you know, this guy is taking care of the whole office. I mean, that's some real interpersonal dedication there, isn't it? Now, here's a child in Japan being taught to serve early on. Very creative, wouldn't you say? Then there's transcendence. Now, in the 1880s, 1880 to 1920, there was a movement in this country called muscular Christianity, at which time we began to connect the care of the human organism to the spiritual quest. It began perhaps before with a movement called physical morality, which said basically what each of us does with our body does impact others. And so we have a moral imperative to take care of ourselves whenever we can. There's one of Michelangelo's pictures that shows clearly this muscular Christianity. And later you'll see some pictures that indicate this whole muscular Christianity movement is surfacing again. So that's a recap.